What's up, guys? I'm Chris Spags here, back to another Four Corners video breaking down tonight's appropriately sized 9-game NBA slate, courtesy of Osmo.com. We've had a good week with this video with the content I've had in here, as well as the likes and the views, so please help us out. Continue helping me push this video up to the next level of success. Like the video right now. Leave me a comment down below telling me which guy you're the most afraid of blowing up in your face tonight. Gonna have some popular guys we're gonna talk about in this video. So right now, like the video right now and leave a comment down below. It helps us out a ton. The first corner I want to hit on is a game with the Wizards visiting the Hornets. This one comes with a 234.5 point combined total, which represents an 8.5 point boost for Charlotte and a 1 point boost for the Wizards. Kemba Walker is expected to have 24% ownership right now, and he looks like one of the better plays on the day. He's going against a Wizards team who's allowing 37% from three, as well as 26 assists per game, which is pretty good. And he's had games of 64.5 and 51.75 fantasy points versus the Wizards this year. It all checks out for Kemba. He looks like he's in a great spot, and I like him quite a bit tonight. Marvin Williams and Jeremy Lamb both look like solid wing plays today. Marvin Williams more of a value guy who's not going to have a crazy high ceiling. Jeremy Lamb just showed that ceiling versus the Wizards, putting up 33 fantasy points in 23 minutes the last time that they played. He's been seeing more run recently, so that ceiling could get a little higher. I like both these guys, but I think, again, you're chasing more of a value position if you're going with Williams, chasing more of the upside if you're going with Lamb. Nick Batum's been over 37 minutes in his last 7 games, and that bodes well in his pace-up spot. A lot of rebounding, a lot of assist opportunities available for the Hornets versus his Wizards team, so I think Nick Batum's in another good situation as well. Bradley Beal's been over 50.75 fantasy points in 7 of his last 8 games. His price is up to reflect that, though it's not as high as it was the other day when he was a pretty decent pairing to go along with Luka Doncic in that game stack. Bradley Beal looks like a good play again to me, though that price is a tough one to pay. Jabari Parker has been over 34.25 fantasy points in 3 out of his last 4 games. His minutes, too, have been up on the rise, coming in at 29 minutes last game, up from where he was in the low 20s before that. So Jabari Parker actually might be a more secure play than he seems. Some risk that he loses minutes back to the other wings on the Wizards side, but I think he's been looking good more often than not, and I'm comfortable with him with his price actually coming down a little bit, despite the recent success. Trevor Ariza and Tomas Satoransky both look like guys who have secure minutes, secure roles. I think the upside there maybe not as crazy, though we did just see a ceiling game from Satoransky, putting up a little under 45 fantasy points last game. I think they're both in good spots here, and I'm comfortable with either. Bobby Portis has had less secure minutes recently, but he does have the upside. He's lost minutes to Jeff Green. He's lost minutes to Thomas Bryant in the recent weeks. That's always a risk, but a matchup versus the Hornets could be a beneficial one for him, so I don't mind Bobby Portis. Probably going to be higher on the other guys I've talked about, but Bobby Portis is definitely in the mix and a very tournament-y play. The next corner I want to hit on is a game with the Thunder visiting the Clippers, and this one has a 237.5 total, which is the highest on today's slate, and that represents a 5.7 point boost for the Clippers and a 2.3 point boost for the Thunder. Lou Williams, one of those guys I'm going to keep talking about until he hits. He's under 10% ownership today. A pace-up spot versus a team on a back-to-back does seem like a situation where he could get going and have that big day, which it seems like he's on the cusp of. The usage is there. The minutes are there. He's just not having that big day. But I like his chances here again. And again, at just 10% ownership, it doesn't take a lot of exposure to get above the field. Danilo Gallinari has been over 34.75 fantasy points in his last 3. And though he hasn't shown that ceiling, it's still a decent spot for him. Again, a back-to-back matchup for the Thunder, whereas the Clippers are fresh. So it's a good spot for Danilo Gallinari to get going. The question is just whether he can push that usage up enough to get there. But I think he's in the mix for me. I think it's a perfectly reasonable price, so I don't mind him today. And Montrezl Harrell also looks like a decent play. The Thunder's rebounding rate has been dropping a little bit recently, not doing that well on the boards. Montrezl Harrell, a guy who can put up a lot of numbers, a lot of rebounds fast, so I think he's in a good spot here going against that Thunder second unit. I like Harrell as well. Since a guy like Royce O'Neal is going to be highly owned in that Jazz game, I think you got to look some other places for value today. And one place I would look, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's been over 25.75 fantasy points in his last 3. I think that bodes pretty well for him. It's a pace-up spot again. He also can pick up some defensive statistics, so I think that all looks good for Shai. Another guy, Ivica Zubac, is in the mix as a value guy, but he just got 14 minutes last game versus the Lakers, and that was a revenge spot where you'd think they'd want to feed him a little more. So Zubac, not the safest play, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander looks pretty safe and pretty sound. Paul George got back on track yesterday from a fantasy perspective, but his numbers in the last 3 games do show that he may be suffering from those shoulder issues. He shot 7 for 24, 8 for 25, and 7 for 23 in his last 3 games. Again, if you're shooting with a shoulder problem, a rotator cuff issue is what the reports are, it could be a bad spot for him to heat up, but he's getting the looks, he's taking the looks. I worry a little bit about back-to-back. If you are suffering from a shoulder issue, I think going back to the well after just playing an OT game on a back-to-back is not the best spot to be. But Paul George, I think, still seems worth the risk. And under 20% ownership, that does seem fair. Russell Westbrook is also projected for under 20% ownership, and he hasn't shown a ton of upside versus the Clippers so far this year. Games of just 56 and 55.25 fantasy points, but it's a nice high-paced spot. I think the back-to-back and the chance of Paul George suffering a little bit, but still being on the floor and creating space for Westbrook could mean a decent day for him. And Steven Adams still at a decent price. I prefer him in lineups where you're not playing Paul George because I think that Paul George's usage takes enough away from Adams. Paul George sucks. We're going to see some more scoring from Adams, some more offensive opportunities as well. The lack of a center for the Clippers should help out Adams as well. So I think this is a nice spot for him, but one in which I'm probably not going to play him if I am going to roster Paul George. The next corner I want to hit on is a game with the Raptors visiting the Pelicans. This one is a 232-point combined total. That represents a 5.1 point boost for Toronto and a 2.8 point drop for the Pelicans. There's no Drew Holiday available for the Pelicans for the next week or so, so Elfrid Payton's currently projected to be the highest owned player on the slate at 35% expected ownership. He goes from 0.96 to 1.05 fantasy points per minute without Drew, which is fine, but I think it's not worth this high ownership we're expecting on him. Elfrid Payton's at a good price. I get it. I'm probably going to go under the field, though, because I think you can probably find value elsewhere. And I think there's ceiling for Payton just not that high because of the matchup and the fact he's just not that great as a permanent player. Julius Randle should get some more opportunity, too. I think he's really the only shot the Pelicans have of staying in this game now that we have no Drew Holiday. Anthony Davis is going to chip in as well, but at just 20 minutes, what's he really going to do? Julius Randle, though, I think is a guy who can have a decent day here, can spike some upside as well, can do some more playmaking, some more ball handling time. All that bodes well for Julius Randle if he does get going and the Pelicans can hang in this game. Kenrich Williams is at a decent value right now, and he also should soak up some of that usage that Drew Holiday and Etuan Moore, who's also out, leave behind. Not a high ceiling guy. Well, he actually has shown a decent ceiling. Not a great per minute guy, not a guy you're super confident about, but he should get the run. And really the run has been the thing that's helped Kenrich Williams more than anything. So run and usage available should be an okay spot for Williams, but not a guy who I'd want to trust at super high volume. And I have to mention Frank Jackson because somebody has to play in the backcourt and pick up those Drew Holiday minutes. I think he's an okay play. He really hasn't been great on a per minute basis, but he has shown upside before in the preseason and some other spots. So I don't mind Frank Jackson, but not a guy I'm necessarily dying to get into my lineups. For Kyle Lowry, the pace up spot makes him interesting despite Kawhi being in the lineup. Kyle Lowry's had over 47 fantasy points in 3 out of his last 5 games. 2 of those came without Kawhi, so that's not great. But one with Kawhi does show that he can get there. A pace-up spot means more possessions, more opportunity, more peripheral stats as well. So Kyle Lowry in play for me, and I think he's okay with Kawhi Leonard as well. Kawhi Leonard, to me, looks solid for cash or tournaments today. I don't know the ownership's going to be on him enough to be worth putting in cash, but I think he's a steady play today. He's going to have some upside. The pace-up spot as well should benefit him. So I like Kawhi today, and I think it's one of those days with where his price is, you can actually put him in some lineups for tournaments and feel pretty good about it. Serge Ibaka would be an interesting play if he's starting again, given the pace-up and this matchup. I think that's one to keep a close eye on. Obviously, if Marc Gasol picks up the start, Serge Ibaka loses that run, which could be helpful. But if he's starting, he's getting that full run. I think he looks like a nice spot for Serge Ibaka, and I'd prefer him to Pascal Siakam at a much higher price. Danny Green's not a guy I'm trying to get in lineups a lot, but I think the matchup here, the pace and the space should help him out quite a bit. The Pelicans are allowing close to a slate high, 33.2 3-point attempts allowed. That should bode well for Danny Green as the team's primary 3-point shooter. So he's in an okay spot. His price is pretty affordable. And again, if we're looking for value guys who aren't Royce O'Neal, he is one of the guys who fits that criteria. Last corner I'm going to hit on, and this was a tough choice. I think the game with the Sixers and the Rockets is also one which is worth hitting on, especially with Ben Simmons being questionable. So check my column. It's the link in the description to switch and hedge on Osmo.com. I'll give you more details there. But that fourth corner is going to be a game for me with the Pistons visiting the Bulls. This one has a 218.5 point combined total, which represents a 2.3 point boost for Chicago and a 3.5 point boost for Detroit. Zach LaVine has had usage as high as 38% and 39% recently. I think you see him really rounding into form here. For me, the thing is more of a matchup as well. The Pistons close out on 3-point shooters pretty well. I think you're going to see a lot of slash and kick game, a lot of slash and score game from Zach LaVine today. So he's a guy who's very in consideration for me, especially because I think this game does stay close. Larry Markkanen's shot attempts have just been down. He put up just 9 shots last game, which is his lowest number of shot attempts since January 11th. There's just a lot of competing for usage here, so I think that's a bit of a risk, but eventually it has to level out, you would assume, and Larry Markkinen does seem like a guy who should be able to stretch the floor versus this Pistons squad. Otto Porter and Robin Lopez, same thing. Both guys looking good. Otto Porter shooting as many as 20 times recently. Robin Lopez looking very steady, averaging 32.2 fantasy points in his last 9 games, so those guys look good, but again, they're competing for this. There's only one ball. There's only one ball for the go around, so if Markkinen takes some shots back, you're going to probably see less for Porter. I think Zach LaVine's the safest guy. Robin Lopez as well has been getting shots. He's shot upwards of 18 times. It's a lot of shots to go around for these guys, so you want to see the game stay close. The pace, though, makes it tough for all these guys to get there. So I think 2 out of these 4 guys would be good, but not much more than that. And Chris Dunn hasn't shown much ceiling, but his price is down enough. He's a starting guard. He's been a decent per minute guy, so I don't mind Chris Dunn. The ceiling, not really there, but I think a little bit of exposure, a little taste of exposure seems about right for me with Chris Dunn, with just his price being so low, $4,900 on DraftKings. Andre Drummond's been much more consistent than Blake Griffin recently, and he's in a good spot. Again, this Bulls team just not that great inside, so this is a nice position for Andre Drummond to be in. I like him quite a bit. And I also like him in lineups with Blake Griffin. And about Blake Griffin, he hasn't been that consistent recently. He's been some really bad games recently for him, actually. So his price is down, but he's shown 61.5 fantasy point upside versus the Bulls earlier this year. That was a game in which Andre Drummond was still really not doing that well at the beginning of the year. But I think this is a spot where both guys can get there. I like the matchup. I like the Bulls being able to keep it close. So I think this is one of those situations where I'm not afraid to game stack. And if I am game stacking, I'm not afraid to go to Drummond and Griffin together. Reggie Jackson looks okay to me, but Ish Smith has been really coming for his minutes recently. Ish has been over 25 fantasy points for 3 games in a row. Reggie Jackson always an play anyway, so I might be more inclined to play Ish as another value guy. But Reggie Jackson, he's there. He's getting minutes. He's got a shot, but just not looking fantastic. Luke Kennard's had 5 out of his last 6 games over 30.5 fantasy points. That's pretty consistent value as well. Again, if we're not trying to go to that Royce O'Neal tier of guys, he's another dude who's a little bit more expensive, but is going to give you pretty steady production. It's a good spot versus the Bulls. He's getting the minutes. It all makes sense to play some Luke Kennard, even though the ceiling probably not terribly high. So there we go. Those are my thoughts on today's 9-game NBA slate. And of course, there is more in the description. Click the link up top for my column, The Switch and Hedge, on Awesemo.com to see everything I'm thinking about today's slate. And please do like the video and leave a comment telling me which guy you're the most worried about on today's slate. We've talked about a lot of guys. We're going to have some ownership. Also, Paul George was that shoulder, maybe a real issue with the back-to-back. So go ahead, like the video right now and leave a comment down below. Tell me which guy you like, but you're worried the most about. And of course, check the promo code. I'm going to drop in right here. I didn't think of a hand gesture in advance, but maybe a hug of the promo code. Ooh, look at this big hug for the promo code. That's the promo code Switch and Hedge. It'll get you half off your first month at Awesemo.com. So very deserving of affection given to a graphic. It's going to give you all the ownership projections we discussed in this video, as well as rankings from Awesemo, who's the top player in the world across a number of sports. You also get access to premium Slack, a bunch of great content, including the deep dive, which is from the guys Laffy and Adam, who are on the Deeper Dive show on this YouTube channel every day, doing a fantastic job. Their columns are really good one to read every day, and it's available only for premium members. So check the promo code, the big hug for the promo code. Check it out. I'll be back again on Monday with another Four Corners video. So wishing you guys a great weekend and good luck.